Unnecessary barriers, expense and duplication. Unnecessary barriers. In the past, some European blue cheeses couldn't be sold until the regulators looked at new scientific evidence and changed their minds. Unnecessary expense. Under a recent trade agreement, Korea agreed to recognize the international standards applied by the European Union (EU) as safe enough for Korea's market. Unnecessary duplication. The European Union (EU), the United States of America (US), trade companies have to comply with two different sets of regulations. It makes more expensive to do business and ultimately reduce the amount of economic activity. The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership (TTIP), Energy and Climatic Policy. Are the United States of America (US) and Canada ready to liberalize shale gas to the European Union (EU)? Price equalization effect and shifts in comparative energy prices. Will shale gas imports to the European Union (EU) reduce CO2 emissions? Is it cheaper and cleaner energy for the European Union (EU) to reduce subsidies and support for wind, solar and bioenergy? How potentially cheaper and more secure energy base will influence nuclear power plants construction? What would be the potential effect on the European Union (EU) competitiveness? Employment impact. The increased level of economic activity will benefit the European Union (EU) and the United States of America (US) labor markets, both in terms of overall wages and new job opportunities for high-and low-skilled workers. Labor displacement will be well within normal labor movements and economic trends. This means a relatively small number of people would have to change jobs and move from one sector to another, 0.2% minus 0.5% of the European Union (EU) labor force. Changes in allocation of labor will be accompanied by higher productivity and incomes. The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership (TTIP) and Genetically Modified Organisms (GMO) issue. The basic European Union (EU) law on genetically modified organisms (GMO) will not be part of the negotiations. That law already allows some genetically modified organisms (GMO) to be sold in the European Union (EU), provided they have been approved for use either as food, animal feed or for sowing as crops. So far, 52 genetically modified organisms (GMO) have been authorized. The European Union (EU) and the United States of America (US) already exchange information on policy, regulations and technical issues concerning genetically modified organisms (GMO). The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership (TTIP) is to support this cooperation. The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership (TTIP) Study, Options and Benefits Centre for Economic Policy Research, London. Different policy options range from bilateral agreements limited in the scope to tariffs or services of procurement only to a full-fledged free trade agreement with a comprehensive liberalization covering tariffs, procurement, non-tariff barriers to trade, (NTBS), for goods, and non-tariff barriers to trade, (NTBS), for services. The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership (TTIP) Study, Options and Benefits Centre for Economic Policy Research, London. The comprehensive option includes two scenarios. Both scenarios are more focused on the lowering of procurement-related non-tariff barriers to trade, (NTBS), than for other non-tariff barriers to trade, (NTBS), affecting goods and services. It is assumed that non-tariff barriers to trade, (NTBS), linked to procurement reduced by 25% in the less ambitious and 50% in the most ambitious scenarios respectively. Poland's perspective: dynamic micro and macro effects. Besides trade creation, trade diversification and spillover effect which reflects allocation adjustment and enlargement, it is important to analyze the competition effect on entrepreneurship, innovation and competitive position of the European Union, (EU), and the United States of America, (US), versus the rest of the world. Improved market efficiency. Due to new opportunities, greater choices and competitive pressure for cost reduction, diversification, quality improvement and market innovation. Increased purchasing parity of consumers' income. Improved external and internal economic equilibrium. Reduced transaction costs and risk. Poland's perspective-specific issues. Are the United States of America, US, and Canada ready to start export of shale gas to Europe? Impact on Poland energy balance and energy cost. Shale gas import and code to emission reduction. Impact shale gas import and efficiency of solar, bio and wind technologies. Shale gas and coal and nuclear power generation options. The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, TTIP, and European Union, EU, energy security. Poland's perspective. Development of professional services. Development of research activities. Internationalization of universities. Issue of American visas for all Schengen members. Monetary and fiscal policy standards. The European Union, EU, rating agencies. American banks and Basel III. Financial speculation and Toby tax. World opportunities and benefits. Dynamic impact due to higher income growth in transatlantic area. Competitive pressure and more opportunities for everybody. New transparent standards for non-tariff barriers to trade, NTBS, public procurement, trade in services, intellectual property rights, IPR, Food and Drugs Administration, FDA, rules and regulations, agricultural protection. Smart-friendly regulations to entrepreneurs and buyers. Reduce transaction costs and risks. Reduced institution risks for innovative projects. Annex. Potential benefits of the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, TTIP, Innovation Gap. Summary of Macroeconomic Impact Centre for Economic Policy Research, London. Total effect of the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, TTIP. For the rest of the world, Centre for Economic Policy Research, London. Computable General Equilibrium Modelling. Household Disposable Income Centre for Economic Policy Research, London. Computable General Equilibrium Modelling. Per household estimates are for a family of 4. Changes in bilateral exports, 20% directs below the Centre for Economic Policy Research, London. Computable General Equilibrium Modelling. The European Union, EU, innovation performance compared with developed and emerging economies in 2010 to 2011. Note. Average performance is measured using a composite indicator building on data for 12 indicators ranging from lowest possible performance of 0 to a maximum of 1. Average performance reflects performance in 2010 to 2011 due to a lack in data availability. The European Union, EU, innovation performance compared to main competitors. Innovation performance. The European Union, EU, 27 versus the United States of America, US. A country has a performance led over the EU 27 if the relative score for the indicator is above 0 and a performance gap with the EU 27 if the relative score is below 0, or the EU 27 has a performance led if the relative score for the indicator is below 0 and a performance gap if the relative score is above 0. Relative annual growth as compared to that of the EU 27 over a 5-year period. Making existing laws more compatible. Car safety. The safety regulations that apply to cars are different in the United States of America, US, and the European Union, EU, even if the end result is comparable levels of safety. The European Union, EU, and the United States of America, US, would like regulators to formally recognize that important parts of 2 regulatory systems are broadly the same in safety terms. Example. The European Union, EU, and the United States of America, US, have different but similar safety requirements in relation to lights, door locks, brakes, steering, seats, seat belts and electric windows. Coordinating the future. Electric cars. Electric cars offer great potential to reduce environmental pollution, but boosting growth requires new infrastructure as well as new technologies and standards to ensure they are safe. That is why the European Union, EU, and the United States of America, US, regulators try to find common solutions that would allow building a real transatlantic market. The authorities have already agreed to set up testing laboratories on both sides of the Atlantic that will work together on safety and performance requirements for electric vehicles and batteries. Regulators are also working on common transatlantic standards for the plugs, sockets and other equipment needed to charge at the cars of the future. Drug safety approvals. The case of drug approvals is a good example. Here the European Union, EU, and the United States of America, US, cooperation has reduced unnecessary duplication while maintaining, and even reinforcing, a high level of consumer